This is Samuel with Rogue Wave Coffee. I'm one of the roasters here, and I'm really excited to share December's subscription coffee with you guys. So this is Boquete, Community Lot 2 from Panama. This is a field blend coffee that we find has a lot of those kind of like classic, comfortable coffee notes, but I'd say kind of elevated. So it's really like graceful, well-structured version of what you might think of when you think of like a classic Panamanian coffees. It being December, holidays coming up, I thought it might be really fun to do batch brew. In our shop, we've been using the Panama Boquete as batch brew for the last like month and a half. Honestly, it's kind of a staff favorite. I know I drink a little bit of it every day. It's sweet, it's simple, you just want to keep drinking it. I think it would be really nice if we could share that experience for you guys who aren't able to come into the cafe. And we'll just talk a little bit about batch brew, because I think batch brew is how a lot of us start in coffee. As we go down the kind of rabbit hole of pour over and stuff, we kind of leave batch brew behind, but you know, holidays are coming up. Sometimes you want to make a big pot of coffee for people, and there's no better way to do that than batch brew. And then I'll throw in a couple tips if you want to kind of like elevate your batch brew game, but I do want to keep this simple. So to start off with, we're actually going to do 2 scoops of coffee. If you do have a scale, it's about 30 grams coffee. If you don't have a scale, that's okay, because a lot of batch brewers have these little markings on the side, or you can use a measuring cup. And if you're able to, if you have access to a grinder, freshly ground is always gonna yield a better, more aromatic cup of coffee. So really simply, 30 grams of coffee, 750 grams of water, you get it in your batch brewer and you let it do its thing. This is just, as you can see, it's the most basic possible batch brewer, drip brewer, kind of whatever coffee maker that we can find. The whole idea is you don't necessarily need, you know, the most expensive coffee maker or elaborate like experience and knowledge and pour over to get a good cup of coffee. If you start with good coffee, you're usually gonna end up with a pretty good cup as long as you don't get in the way of that coffee. So we'll talk a little bit about what the important things are when you're thinking about batch brew at home, how to dial in batch brew. So first, I think probably the most important tip with batch brew at home is to think about ratio. So ratio is gonna be how much water, how much coffee. Some people like a stronger cup of coffee, some people like a more delicate cup of coffee. For this recipe, I went on the stronger side because I find a stronger cup of coffee is gonna stand up to cream, sugar, Baileys, you know, whatever you want to put in your coffee, you're still gonna get that coffee flavor coming through. Water is also important. If you only have tap water, that's fine, but if you're able to at least like Brita filter your water or some sort of like basic filtration, basically the better the water, the more kind of clear your cup of coffee is gonna be. So yeah, using filtered water is a really good tip. Pre-rinse your filter. It makes a little bit of a difference. Some people say it makes a huge difference. I think some people might be more sensitive to the taste of paper, and it does depend on what kind of filters you're using. So if you're using like thicker kind of bamboo paper for filters, definitely give it a rinse. I usually find it safe to just give it a rinse anyway. And yeah, I talked about pre-ground. What's the last thing? Oh, so one thing you can do, depending on your coffee maker, this may be easy or it may be difficult. It's a little more difficult on this one, but something you can do to ensure that you're getting a nice, even, full extraction of the coffee that's in your basket is to give it a little stir. So I find generally it's better to do it closer to the end of the brew because you don't want to clog up the filter and have things overflow. And because all coffee makers are different, it's easier to say just give it a little stir at the end, and that's just going to help boost that final extraction. So I'm going to give it a shot. So just looking in here, I can see that essentially one of the biggest problems with more traditional simple batch brewer is it's not going to evenly extract. So it's usually going to drop your water into one certain area of the basket, kind of flood that out and not extract it evenly. So giving it a stir, it helps to offset that a little bit. While our coffee is brewing, it should only be a few minutes more. Because I am roasting and I have some experience roasting this coffee, I did want to share a little bit about what that journey's been like, kind of from cupping table to now presenting it to you guys for subscription. So this coffee is actually pretty incredible. I'd say it's really versatile. It can stand up to a few different roast styles. It's complex, but it's also comfortable. So in cupping this coffee, initially I was getting a lot of silky, kind of slick melt, lighter, some more florals, a little bit of like pear, apple, but there was always a hint of there being some deeper sweetness in this coffee. And I think given that there was like, you know, traces of like pecan and stuff, what we've done is we've actually leaned a little more into those sort of like comfortable, more developed notes. So getting more into that like almond, that chocolate. There's always a really nice like apple, pear, sort of like malic bouquet in this coffee. Basically what we're doing when we're roasting it is kind of moderate heat, holding it and letting those flavors really develop out without imparting any roast flavor to the coffee. So we don't want to take this coffee dark. What we want to do is just give it time to really build up that body so we get a syrupy, rich, comfortable cup of coffee at the end of it. And I think we've been able to do that. So our coffee's almost ready, and we'll call the crew in here to try some coffee. All right. One. Cheers.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
From Roe.
How's the coffee?
Cozy.
That's some sweet coffee.
Yeah, I mean, it's a comfortable, classic cup of coffee. And definitely better than the coffee that I used to drink on a brewer like this. It's kind of that classic flavor, some chocolate, some nice sweet like pecan. But there's definitely some complexity there. I think especially as it cools, we're gonna get a little bit more of those florals, a little bit of that round, gentle, malic acidity, peach, apple. It's a really nice coffee for this time of year. Nice coffee for winter, and you know, with the stronger brew recipe, it's gonna stand up to whatever you choose to add to it as well. Thank you, hope you have great holidays, and we'll see you next year.